Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial. Go to audibletrial.com/Rushmore. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Greetings and welcome to Mount Rushmore. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined, as per usual, by my good friends Richard.
Hello.
And Miguel.
Howdy.
These guys, they discuss, they deliberate, they debate the most ubiquitous four of any given topic, and this week is no different when we discuss the Mount Rushmore of Impostors. Richardo, why did you choose this?
Before I talk about that, I just want to say welcome back to the judging throne.
Oh, thanks.
Jeff.
It was a rough couple of weeks.
I have to admit that it wasn't me who was a competitor.
What? Bum.
Snap zoom on Michael, snap zoom on Richard. It was an imposter.
Oh, was it your brother?
That's right. Yep.
No wonder it went so well.
No wonder it was. The points were articulate and well placed. So
no, I guess I picked this. I've always had sort of a fascination, as we've kind of learned before. With I came up with the hoaxes one, and some of the topics I've come up with kind of are around this sort of idea of people portraying something that they're not, or portraying a situation where that's not real, or sort of just around the fringes of what is actual reality.
Conspiracies was yours too.
That was another one, yeah.
how much your topics shed light on your intellect, your profile, your
personality. You could have a fucking field day with this, guys.
Freud is like, no, I pretty much got it in like a minute.
Yeah, no, this is easy, guys. Knock this one out. Next.
So there's a theme.
I guess so. I guess, that's something that's always kind of interested me. People, this one specifically, people who are able to inhabit either a completely new persona or bring in elements of their persona that just don't exist. So.
Yeah, fascinating. So, Richard, you have chose it. So, Michael, you will start it.
My first choice is an action figure.
Oh, dear.
Wait. Are we doing the same topic here?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Faker, the robotic evil He-Man from the Masters of the Universe line of toys.
Was he also in the TV series?
He was.
Okay, then I feel better about this one.
Okay. I mean, most of whatever was on TV was on the toys, or vice versa, because one was selling the other. And so
right, exactly.
Faker was a robot that was built by the evil Skeletor. To kind of infiltrate Castle Grayskull or get next to King Randor or something to pose as He-Man and do evil things. The only trouble with Faker was that he was blue, had orange hair, and like an orange breastplate that was like in the style of Skeletor. So here's a picture of Faker.
Yeah.
Who is getting fooled by that?
Well, the colorblind people who hang out with He-Man's colorblind friends.
He had the toy had a big like sticker showing that he was a robot in case you couldn't tell, and it was so obviously a fake.
Yeah,
hence the name. But what I think it really played into was Skeletor's his sense of worth.
Yeah,
where he built a robot that was in the shape of He-Man, but basically looks exactly like him.
Yes.
He's blue. He's wearing the same outfit, basically.
So in the tradition of orange-haired individuals who are blatantly up to no
Cyndi
good.
Lauper? So true.
Yeah, that's right where I was going. Oompa Loompas 1 through 5.
Also from the 80s, yeah.
What, do you suspect that they said, we've got these leftover He-Mans that actually got injected by blue plastic?
I think one thing that you'll notice in like the toy line especially is that like the parts are very interchangeable. Like all of the, like He-Man's like, this huge built guy, but Man-at-Arms is as built as him.
Yeah.
Skeletor is the same body type.
Right.
They're all just like, there's slight variations on whether you're like a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like either you're a bad guy and you have like these 3 like toed claw feet, or like you're a good guy and you have like
bowl cut haircut.
Boots.
Yeah.
But they're all just kind of repaint. A lot of them are just like repaints and reused legs and torsos and arms and stuff. But I love the idea that they just got the batch wrong, and they're like, what are we doing? Or maybe something was like faxed over to China or wherever it was made, and just the colors were wrong, and they're like, "Are you sure?" They're like, "Pretty sure."
This brings up, I think, a compelling point in that imposters are sometimes self-created, but they might somehow be created by someone else. Think of the individuals, if not to look at it from a political standpoint, but all the candidates who are kind of strings have being pulled by somebody with an agenda.
Yeah,
and also the idea that much of what makes a successful imposter is not their behavior, but the gullible willingness of all the idiots around them or their inability to maybe think a little bit kind of abstractly and wonder who the fuck this person is in front of them isn't who they say they are.
There was a difference with in the cartoon series, like Faker was like, he looked exactly like He-Man. He had like
the blonde bowl cut,
and he had more of He-Man's skin color and everything. So like, I guess in the cartoon you could be like, okay, I understand that's what they were going for
guys,
the kids.
He-Man's not looking really good. I think he's got like can John just make you blue?
One of my favorite things though, and under like abilities for the toy, it says superhuman strength, which that's nice, and then near perfect replica of He-Man, and like that's way off.
And very specific. It's a very good thing there's somebody called He-Man who looked like him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would just be a guy he'd be like Blue Man, like bulky Blue Man Group guy.
The character of He-Man, where did this come from? Originated in the comics? I was never a He-Man.
It's a German fairy tale.
Originally, they were trying to do a toy. It came out of two places. They were trying to do like a toy series based on Conan the Barbarian, and they couldn't quite get the rights settled with Mattel. Oh. And then there was also another toy line called like Big John or something, and it was like this kind of melting of like these two properties into. There's a great like Masters of the Universe, like the making or like a history of it.
Okay,
that kind of goes into it, but basically they were like, they came up with a new like size toy, which was different. The action figure size was reduced from these bigger toys from the 70s, that were like 9-10 inches tall. That like what's that movie? The 40-Year-Old Virgin that he has all the different action figures of.
What's that? G.I. Joe, doesn't he?
He has G.I. Joe, but he has something.
Was it a Western?
No.
Okay.
What's the Schindler's List?
Awful. Anyway, he has a bunch of toys that were like 10-inch tall toys or 12-inch tall like Mego toys. But Mattel kind of figured out how to kind of reduce them in size. And I think they wanted something bigger than what Star Wars toys were, which were those like 3 3/4 inch toys, but something that was
not like Stretch Armstrong, or like the WWF
$1 Million Man is what I'm thinking.
Okay, right.
Or is it? Not Ted DiBiase.
What? I was thinking WWF LJN wrestler guys again.
The $6 Million Man. Toys is what he collected on the 40-Year-Old Virgin. But anyway, so they wanted their own kind of unique toy size, but wanted like all these different elements of like, they wanted fantasy and weapons and accessories and things that they could play with that were, but regardless, it was basically came out of that He-Man from the toys to when it became a cartoon sort of changed. The original He-Man comic of He-Man, he was just like some barbarian doof.
Oh, okay.
And then it turned into this whole nonsense with Prince Adam. Yada yada.
Well, cool. So we've let off with that. Richard, what's your first?
Okay, so my first one is sports. Just wanted to let you guys trigger warning for our friend Browntown.
I've been triggered.
Yeah.
He stopped listening last year.
As most people have. My first one is a man called Barry Bremen. And he was known as the Great Imposter. He was a novelty goods salesman kind of in the 70s and 80s who one day got bored and decided he wanted to live out a little bit of almost like a Walter Mitty sort of lifestyle. So his first thing he did in the 1979 All-Star Game, he was able to somehow procure like the warm-up suit from a Kansas City Kings player.
I've seen
a few weeks before.
I've seen NBA games, the Kansas City Kings. Yeah.
Did you?
I'm old school. Yeah.
Man, or just old.
Well, just old. Yeah, no school.
And so when the All-Star Game came around to Detroit, which is where he lived, he managed to put on the suit, and he was like 6'4", so he was like kind of a big athletic-looking guy, and sneak onto the court for warm-ups.
All right.
For the All-Star Game. And like got there and shot layups, and nobody really noticed until about halfway through, when everyone's like, "Wait, I don't remember playing against him."
Yeah.
And there's a guy on the Kings who's like, "Wait, he's my teammate. I don't remember seeing him," which makes you wonder how much cocaine was going on in the NBA in 1979. But they kind of like, he was like, "Yeah, I just kind of came out here, thought it'd be fun," and they let him kind of just hang out for the rest of not just the warm-ups. He then went and started sitting down on the bench
Because he attained lovable scamp status.
Yes.
Wow.
It was like obvious that like he's not trying to hurt anybody,
Yeah.
so none of the players just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
amazing how it's changed in terms of like liabilities and lawsuits. And
Oh
things.
yeah. Oh, we'll get into this. Yeah. So he goes and sits down on the bench for a couple of minutes until a security guard comes over and is like, "You gotta leave." He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah." Mm-hmm. So he did this, and he wound up getting on the Tonight Show because of this.
Wow.
Like all this coverage. Mm-hmm. So he kind of took this as, maybe I can do more with this. So I think his next stunt was he came onto the field. He managed to sneak onto the sidelines as a Dallas Cowgirls cheerleader during a game.
The front door. 6'4"?
Lost 25 pounds for the role. Had a custom suit made with like big, fake boobs and the whole 9 yards. Didn't last very long on that one.
Yeah.
The Cowboy security showed up and roughed him up pretty good and gave him the old heave-ho on that one. He managed to get on the field during the...
That's when underpants and shirts just had built-in handles that were just built, that you just sewn in, that you could pick them up and just toss them out. Like
a bouncer in a bar could grab you and toss you
They're
up.
called the Andy Caps.
The Andy Caps, yeah.
They just burp. He managed to sneak onto the field during a MLB All-Star game for warm-ups. That one, actually, he had the help of the sports writer Dick Schaap, who had become friendly with him through his kind of exploits and thought, "Oh, here's something we could do." Mm-hmm. So he actually got George Brett roped into this. Mm-hmm. They managed to sneak him into the dugout when they were doing warm-ups, and he hid out in the sauna for a couple of hours and had an authentic New York Yankees outfit, like cap, hat, whole 9 yards. And then just went out there and started shagging, foul balls and throwing around with everybody. And it managed to get into a couple of the team photos before they realized who he was and shoot him away.
This is the man that least benefited from high-definition television.
Yeah.
Lower, or just high. Well, it's also, you got to keep in mind, late 70s, early 80s, everything was SD. Just life.
Yeah, just life.
Not even pictures, not even TV, just everything was like 480p.
Like Pittsburgh was still black and white, I think.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not even sure they had television back then in Pittsburgh.
It seems like this guy being somewhat like the poor man's George Plimpton, like whereas,
but not even actually doing anything.
He's not learning the sport. And then also I can imagine being the manager on one of those teams and it's like, "Get out of here, get out of here, Barry Bremen."
Yeah.
And also that picture that I have, can you leave too?
Can you take him? Wait, are you a lefty?
Yeah.
What's your curveball situation like? Hang on a second. So he wound up doing that. I think some of the other ones he did. Oh, he got onto the field during a World Series game with the rest of the umpiring crew, and was actually out there for the national anthem. The one that he said that he did regret, he got into the Emmys, and when Betty Thomas, the Hill Street Blues actress, he thought that she was not there. So when she won, it was announced as a winner for an award, he came up there and accepted on her behalf.
Oh, wow.
And it turned out she actually was there, and she was like halfway down the stage trying to get her.
Wow.
So he said he felt really bad about that. Like he
stole
wouldn't
her
have.
thunder.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done it if he knew that she was actually there.
So an imposter with a conscience who has clearly some kind of nuanced motivation for is he like kind of like the because it's there, because I can?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the art of the. I think partially it was about the art of the deception. Or how do I go about doing it? Like,
was it because he could go on a talk show and talk about it?
I think it's probably both.
Oh.
I think he's a big sports fan. He got a chance to hobnob. I mean, when he first did it was kind of like on a bet. But, as you kind of go on, he became more famous. He was on Letterman. He was on all these talk shows.
Can you imagine going through life with such confidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, the balls. And this guy,
like that's amazing to me that you're just like, well, I'm just going to go do this thing. I can get away with it, and I can just act the part. And
yeah.
That's amazing.
It's like 10% planning and 90% just sheer balls. I mean, he was like a novelty salesman. He was somebody who just, his kids later said like, yeah, he was just bored selling like, booby stress balls or whatever. And he decided, this would be something that'd be more fun to do.
Yeah.
So he would sneak on the course during like U.S. Open golf, like the practice rounds. And he was able to play a couple of practice rounds, like full rounds. Like nobody came in and took him off.
Yeah.
His last thing he did, I think, was the 86 or 87 All-Star game. And it was in New York. And he did the same thing where he snuck on the field. And Tommy Lasorda found him out. And we'll post this on the website and the social media. There's a clip of Tommy Lasorda harassing him off the field and screaming and yelling obscenities. Who the fuck do you think you are? And poor Barry's, I'm sorry. I just thought it'd be, it's just fun. It's something I do. What kind of fucking respect do you? It's just like ba 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 ba. And then the Met security came and they apparently were not too nice to him this time when they got him into the Huskow.
Seems like as closer we get in history towards actual stalking laws and I think
so that's the thing. It's like and Michael, you said this earlier. He kind of said after that, it's like, this is getting to be different than when I started doing it like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you imagine post 9/11, some dude just wandering out onto the court, trying to wander out onto the court like in an NBA All-Star game or a baseball game, or coming out of the trees during a golf tournament to try and play a practice round, and everyone being like, okay, he seems harmless enough.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, after he had done it a few times, people knew who he was. So if you're a golfer and you saw him come out, and he actually was like a 5 handicap or something like that. But if you saw him come out of the woods and saw him, you're like, oh, it's that Barry Brimham guy. So after a while, I think he became... I'd imagine it became harder for him to do it because people just knew who he was.
Scamp laws were a lot looser back then. Yeah. A lot more accepting.
There's a lovable, but you could also, I think you could be an irascible scamp, or an incorrigible scamp was also, I think there were a different scamp status.
Right. And he seemed to be more of the lovable. Everyone seemed to really like him, so that probably helped.
If you're Morgana, they don't like tase you. They just say, we appreciate
that would have been incredible, though, if that would have happened, right? And here comes Morgana. Oh, my God!
You think the guy that sold booby stress balls and Morgana would have made a really, just a big hit together.
A really dream team.
Morgana was a dream team.
High five. You hear that? Audience, that was a high five. Insert slapping sound.
I earned that one.
Michael, second.
My next one is a 2-for-1, and that is the R&B group Milli Vanilli.
Oh, yay!
Everyone knows who Milli Vanilli are. The Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus, who were a R&B group who had one super huge hit, "Girl, You Know It's True."
Yeah.
And then it was later revealed that they didn't actually do any of the singing on it.
Yeah.
Apparently, that song was recorded before they were even hired by like the guy that created the group.
Oh, wow.
That they were just hired to be the faces of it. And according to them, they were, under contract to be these impersonators and be just kind of the face of the group. And it's not their fault. But I mean, at some point, you have to take a little bit of ownership on going out and lip syncing and faking and being imposter of a musician. I think my favorite thing about them, other than them going out on stage at some performance and just the track getting
this was on MTV.
Yeah,
on like what was the name of their the dance show? The Grind? Was it The Grind?
The Grind with Downtown Julie Brown.
Yeah, not that you ever watched it or masturbated to it, Jeff.
It wasn't that they.
It was a performance where they came out and like the track skipped and they didn't know what to do, so they just kind of faked it, then eventually ran off the stage, which I'm kind of a little proud of. It's like it's the opposite of like super confidence of the previously mentioned guy. It's just like we gotta go.
Yeah,
but it was later after they had won like a Grammy for Best New Artist for like this song, or I don't know if they won Best New Artist or Best Song as well, but. They had this press conference where they came out to kind of address the allegations of lip syncing.
Yeah.
And one of the guys just started singing, and it was so terrible.
I'm in love with you, girl, cause you're on my mind, and you're the one I think about most every time. And when you crack a smile, and everything you do.
And then all the press started clapping and cheering for him. And it was like, what are you doing?
What are you doing anymore?
He hasn't proved anything.
That's
He's
funny.
proved the opposite.
Yeah.
He's proved that he can't sing.
Yeah.
And then he immediately sits down and says, we'd like to give this Grammy back.
That's hilarious.
But it's so funny that like in an age where performances in general, or at least, there's like big kind of Super Bowl performance type things and live things, there's some sort of, all right, maybe they're lip syncing, maybe they're trying to, they're performing a bit basically. They're not, maybe they're singing, in the studio, but if you're performing live, it's kind of accepted, or it's known at least nowadays.
Yeah,
right.
Or it's kind of like, it's not the end of the world if you realize that the pop singer who is running around on stage with like a headset isn't actually singing. It's, a pre-recorded track.
Yeah.
But I think back then it kind of removed some of like the, went behind the scenes. You're like, oh, that's just not cool.
Yeah. And, I think live versus recording is the crux of the problem. The music industry trying to create a quality product and then trying to keep artists on the road touring kind of happened at the same time that the singer-songwriter movement came around, so that in previous decades, an entertainer had no responsibility whatsoever to create or originate the work that they were presenting. And then after Bob fucking Dylan and Joan Baez and all these people who, part of their authenticity was the fact that they wrote this song, that it is penned entirely by themselves, gave authorship so much more importance. So Frank Farian, who created Milli Vanilli, had another band, Boney M, that was incredibly popular.
That's what we call Richard.
Boney M was like
That's
the
true, 'cause
biggest.
I'm so tall.
It's like the biggest pop act in Europe, and that had it was just all fake people for the most part. So,
Well, the Village People.
the village
Like
people,
only two of them actually sang, like the lead singer and then one of the other guys sang,
Yeah.
and everybody else was just lip syncing.
I think
I hope it's the same way as like the Spice Girls, where everyone's like, oh yeah, well, Scary Spice is the one that can really sing, or who's the other one?
It was either Sporty or
Guys, Sporty is the one that can sing. Do you think there was like people sitting around going, well, it's the Indian.
yeah.
It's the Indian that can. It's no. It's a
the
policeman.
construction worker. cannot
Construction
sing,
worker.
but yeah,
Yeah.
he's-
I think it's the kind of musical equivalent of a performer wearing makeup on film or television. And then saying, "I always look like this." Milli Vanilli seemed like their cardinal sin they committed was by claiming that they actually did it, and then saying they were also better than Paul McCartney and the Rolling Stones.
That's a bit of a push.
Yeah, they said all that shit.
Maybe the confidence is back in these guys too. Maybe a lot of our choices so far are
it's 10% what you say, 90% how you say
Yeah.
it. So
5% orange hair.
So this is fundamentally different than the Monkees.
Yeah,
We think.
yeah,
Because there wasn't there, but I guess to your point, wasn't there also an issue of authenticity with the Monkees in that, they were this prefabricated pop group that didn't in the beginning play their own music, even though on the show it looked like they did, and really only partially sang on their songs.
yeah.
Whoever's lead singer was, a couple of them sang, most of them didn't.
I'm just thinking,
They didn't write their own songs.
Yeah, the artifice, the entertainment industry has always been the entertainment industry, not the truth or reality industry.
Right.
But there's something about the political climate in the 60s that gave way to artists who were supposed to have some kind of integrity, musical or otherwise, and then all the entire entertainment industry was now evaluated differently than it ever was before. So I think that's so funny because they hadn't been doing anything, they didn't do anything differently than the predecessors right before them.
Yeah.
Did. Oh, you want some ugly ass producer up there dancing around? you don't want that. That's fascinating. And they.
I guess it almost speaks to, sorry to cut you off, it almost speaks to what's more important is it the image of the group? Is it the authenticity of the group, or is it the music?
Yeah.
And at some point you can accept just the music and enjoy the music on its own. Although I don't know the last time I've heard, girl, it's true.
Yeah.
Even in jest, I think that there must have been something that kind of broke like that off as like, we just don't even listen to it anymore, even as like a joke track.
Yeah.
So like the image or the facade or the music, like at some point one of them kind of takes precedent.
Yeah.
And well,
I think with the Monkees, they did sing on the tracks, so that was one level of authenticism. They didn't have auto tuning, which we've crucified artists before for using auto tuning. But yeah, I do find that interesting because they're crucified on a cross that didn't exist.
Yeah, and if Milli Vanilli existed today, they would just auto-tune their bad singing.
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have been an issue.
Or they would somehow be a like some of these like K-pop groups or J-pop groups. Like they're an organization. They're not necessarily the people you see on stage are part of this organization.
It's kind of the mafia.
Yeah.
It's very, very suspicious.
Well, that's cool. Okay, Richard, what's your second one?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the authenticity or lack thereof or truth in entertainment.
Oh.
So, can we discuss the crying Indian, Iron Eyes Cody?
Oh, yeah.
Who is neither crying nor an Indian?
Yeah. Nor American, from what I understand.
No, he was.
He
He was. I'm sure everyone, even if you're not of a certain age, like Jeff and I, old farts, are. The Crying Indian from the 1970s, early 1980s anti-pollution ads where someone would throw a plastic bottle or other trash at his feet and you just pan up to him in this very traditional, Buffalo Bill Wild West show type outfit to his Indian face and the single tear coming down. And then it would be pollution. It's a crying shame.
The tear that you could even tell in that unsophisticated days that was some kind of silicate.
Oh, it's glycerin, yeah.
Glycerin.
So that was my point. First off, it was glycerin. So we know that. But then B, turns out Iron Eyes Cody, who had claimed to be part Cree and part Cherokee, actually named Espera Oscar de Cordy, was born in southwestern Louisiana to recent Sicilian immigrants.
This is a real Pocahontas Elizabeth Warren situation we got going on right now.
It goes deeper than that, Michael. And yeah, family moved around, wound up moving to Texas. His dad owned some sort of ranch there. And one day his dad leased out part of the ranch for a film shoot. This would have been in the 1920s, early 1930s. And it was a Western, and he just loved the idea. So he decided, well, this is what I want to do. I want to be an actor in the Westerns. So instead of being an actor, there wasn't a lot of call for Sicilian Western stars. That would have been another 40 years until we really got into the need for that.
Rigatoni Red. There's not enough room in this town for 2 pasta bars.
So he wound up changing his last name to Cody, like Buffalo Bill Cody, but then changing his first name to Iron Eyes Cody, and presenting himself as a Native American. Mm-hmm. Again, someone who had invented this whole backstory about himself, how he was part Cree, part Cherokee. Mm-hmm. His dad had worked in the Wild West shows, and that's how he learned all these roping tricks and all this stuff. Yeah. And he was an actor. He was in, 200 movies.
Wow.
All kinds of TV shows. I mean, he was in, I have a list here. He was in Ernest Goes to Camp, for God's sake.
Oh.
I mean, what more do you want? No, but he was in a ton of movies. He was somebody who had allegedly met with every president since FDR to talk about Native American issues. Was somebody who presented himself as very much this icon of kind of popular culture for Native Americans and someone who is a voice for them. Even though a lot of actual Native American actors were like, that story doesn't check out at all, and that headdress doesn't really make any sense for what. But it kind of just sort of, no one really said anything about it until mid-90s. Reporter from the newspaper in New Orleans started doing some tracking down his background and got his birth certificate, and hey, that's a one Italian last name, and talked to his half-sister. He's like, yeah, one day he just left. And next thing we knew, he was Indian.
Do you think this is a case, especially with the kind of the anti-pollution campaign, where the image is more important than being authentic? That the idea of Native Americans being of the land and would be the ones that are the most hurt by it, or the most connected. That was
the whole point of the campaign.
Yeah.
Is that
obviously that image still resonates, and
right?
It's been mocked and it's been kind of replicated before. At some point, obviously the expose in the 90s probably kind of rewrote a whole bunch of just the history of that and what people actually felt. I'm sure that going through it and you're like, holy shit, this is an important issue. But now it's like, well, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
But then there's the case of he was just an actor playing a part, but then he was seemingly playing a part.
Yeah, if they had hired like a Sicilian American guy to play the part of an Indian guy, would it, like, that's a good point. Would that campaign have worked as well, or would people have been like, what the fuck's going on here?
Do you think most? I'm guessing. I wonder if most people wouldn't even notice. Or,
yeah,
back
in the 70s, it's not like the idea of black, quote unquote, blackface or red face or whatever was considered to be as much of a problem as it is today.
There was no immediate place where you could look it up and research it and check it off and be like and call him out on it.
Yeah, he just basically denied it till the day he died. But he married a Native American woman who was actually worked at the Southwest Museum up here in Los Angeles, up in right by the Autry, as a researcher and historian for Native American issues.
Mm-hmm. He gets a pass then.
Adopted 2 Native American children and lived his life as a Native American. So it does kind of make that
very interesting.
That Rachel Dolezal type of question, right? It's like
self-identification.
Yeah, what do you identify with versus what you actually should identify with, and what does that say? And is that appropriation versus?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it began as a desire to raise awareness, and he was willing to kind of pretend. Was he pretending for a positive reason versus a negative reason? And then once he began to gain monetary benefit from it, and now it became his motives are perceived and scrutinized more.
I think it just started because it was easy for him to break into the business as a Native American in these B westerns in the 20s and 30s, because they always needed somebody who could play that role and be like a decent actor.
I think of like Anthony Quinn, who's played Native Americans
and Greeks
and Genghis Khan. We've got a weird. So sharp-eared listeners might know that sometimes when we mention people, they meet their demise here in the podcast.
He's been dead for 10 years, so we're good.
Trump's family's been pretending to be Swedish for 2 decades. So
2 centuries, or whatever long it is, yeah.
Okay, so am I correct?
Wait, is the FBI going to come after us now, guys? Secret Service?
They don't listen to this podcast.
Gary Trump.
Oh, different Trumps. Okay.
Liz Plummer in North Hollywood. So we are at our midpoint here, and I want to tell you about something awesome. For you, the listeners of the Mount Rushmore podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. With Audible, you can get a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial by going to www.audibletrial.com/Rushmore. You might want to try The Man in the Rockefeller Suit, The Astonishing Rise and Spectacular Fall of a Serial Imposter by Mark Seal. And you can try that or 180,000 other titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, MP3 player, or toaster oven. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Rushmore. Again, that's Audible, free! trial.com/Rushmore for your free audiobook. Guys, ad is over. Now we're imploring you to download, rate, and review all our past episodes and get in the dialogue with us on the Facebook page for the Mount Rushmore podcast, or the Instagram page for Mount Rushmore, or the Twitter handle for Mount Rushmore. So please do that. Be authentic. Don't be an imposter in our lives, and join us in the dialogue. Michael, your third.
My third choice is Frank Abagnale Jr.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Made famous, or made popular, I guess, in the 2002 Spielberg movie Catch Me If You Can, as portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is the number one person that if you want to be portrayed by someone on film, that people are like, oh yeah, that looks exactly like me.
Yeah.
Well, especially back then, I think that mantle may have been passed to Ryan Gosling.
I think that for him, just as an actor,
when he played Jackie Robinson,
for me it's Joe Pesci.
Okay.
I think that he could play the various ages of which the character.
Oh yeah.
He was probably 25 at the time, or maybe a little older, but he could look 15.
Yeah.
Frank was a imposter and a forger. He started at a super young age, at like 15.
Yeah.
Initially trying to, he got into some sort of scam that got his dad in trouble, in terms of like buying cars or buying tires, and then trying to sell them back for like he'd buy them on credit, try to sell them back for cash, and then his dad was on the hook for the money, $3,200 or something. But he basically realized that he could start. He was a pretty good forger, and he was a pretty good. He could just take advantage of people pretty easily. There's like a famous story where he, one of his first kind of major instances was he bought a bank teller's uniform and bought a sign that said "out of order" and put the sign up in front of like a savings and loan drop box, and basically just took people's money, saying, "Oh, the drop box is out of order. You have to give it to me." And people would just hand them their receipts. After a nightclub closes or the restaurant closes, they just hand them all his money, and he'd give them a receipt for X amount of dollars and just walk off with it, even though it's like, how is the box out of order?
I think that's
a great scam artist.
Yeah, and his ability to kind of identify where people's confidence lies and position himself to be at that intersection of not only is Leonardo DiCaprio kind of a square-jawed, cosmetic person who looks somewhat authentic and trustworthy. Remember that Frank Abagnale was prematurely gray. So even as a teenager, he had gray hair. Or he started to have the salt and pepper hair.
That's interesting.
So I think by 18 he was, or maybe he was 20 years
Probably
old.
Looked a lot older than he actually was.
He feigned a doctor's certificate.
I have a quick list of people that he's impersonated and jobs that he's impersonated. Famously, airline pilot for Pan Am and flew around earned like over 1 million miles in airline. A teaching assistant, a physician, like you said, he impersonated being a doctor. Yeah. In the movie, they have a great kind of section where he's watching Perry Mason.
Learning the lingo.
Marcus Welby, I think, or something like that.
He's like watching to see what they say on TV and just being like, okay. Then he decides he can get a law degree. And like all these, like he just able to, whether it's his youthful appearance or like this thing that we've talked about over and over is confidence, just able to earn someone's trust and earn their confidence and in turn kind of screw them over.
The seems like the assets that he had were he was a likable person, and I think that was one when he was working as a I don't even call it the supervising doctor in this amongst a bunch of grad students or people doing their rotations.
Yeah, he was like an ER doctor or something.
People just kind of liked him and thought, well, he's got to be his charm and his desire to be the picture of what people wanted that person to be, that trustworthy, attractive person. But one thing I loved about that book versus the movie was it examined motivations like any film does of the main character and why they do what they do. But we kind of started discussing the motivations of an imposter. Is it to be kind of live the life of those people who you are among that day, or is it to get notoriety by being on TV? That book, for the most part, Frank just wanted pussy. Sorry to be coarse, but when he first started, he got a car and he needed to get around in that car so you could go get girls. He wanted to get on a plane. So why? Because flight attendants are on a fucking plane. And I think that also I love how he kind of also hacked the bank routing systems. Like he learned how to forge checks, and he got like his own check printer, and he knew that when you cash a check, you have like 3 days before the check goes from the one bank to another. But you get more days if you go to Florida. But so he had to get on a plane. So that's why he became a flight pilot. So I just find it fascinating.
I love the end of his story that he ultimately got hired by the FBI.
Yeah,
to do the things that he was forging,
and then ran like a successful company teaching businesses how to avoid getting ripped off by people like him.
There's a story of how he got out of prison because people looked at him and just assumed he was a investigator from the prisons. So to investigate the poor conditions in prison. So they would just let him out of prison.
He's like the
it's like in the movie Idiocracy when they say like, "Oh, he's not I'm not supposed to be here. Are you sure?" That's what the computer says, and they're like, okay. But it says you're supposed. I don't know. Someone else told me. Oh,
okay. So he's sort of like the dark mirror image of Barry Bremen, right? I think in a lot of ways. like Barry Bremen was someone who I think probably had a lot of that same charm and charisma, and people like wanted to believe him or wanted to help him. Except it's almost like he used his powers for good instead of evil, right?
Yeah.
Instead of using it to kind of scam people and write hot checks and do all this stuff, he kind of used it just to, get on the field during the All-Star game and do goofy stuff.
I think that's an aspect of like imposters that there's always seems to be something slightly devious in whatever you're attempting.
Yeah.
Like maybe with Brennan, maybe he didn't have that sort of like an evil about him or a deviousness. Same thing with like Milli Vanilli. But these other guys, I mean, certainly Faker the Robot was out to destroy Eternia, and certainly Frank Abagnale was looking to defraud people and get laid.
Yeah, I think that imposters tend to fall into either the category of they have some sort of ulterior motive or they're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
And Frank Abagnale was definitely the person who had all these ulterior motives, and sometimes those ulterior motives had ulterior motives. And yeah, absolutely fascinating.
I've been in this situation. Maybe this is the opposite, or perhaps related to this imposter behavior.
You're in a swamp, and then you're trying to defraud some kids, and then these teenagers and a dog come by and demask you.
Oh, I wouldn't have done it. I would have done it too.
Swamp Thing shows up.
And Adrienne Barbeau following closely by, where you feel like you actually have the role that you have. Like, I've been in situations through my employment or that I feel like they don't know that I'm a fraud or that I shouldn't be here.
It's imposter syndrome.
They're going to think I'm an imposter.
You have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, imposter
which
syndrome.
is an actual thing where people start to believe that like everything in their life is a fraud.
Well, I just believe that I'm a fraud sometimes.
Oh, well, that's fair enough. Okay. That's fair enough.
Yeah. Richard, what's your third?
My third one is Sarah Edmonds, who was a Canadian female who...
Two strikes against her.
Who moved to the United States. So there's your first imposter right there, trying to pretend to be American during the Civil War, and decided she was a unionist, an abolitionist, and wanted to fight for the Union side during the Civil War. So when she had first moved to the United States, she had moved down because her father they were really poor, and her father was trying to marry her off in an arranged marriage. And she said basically, fuck that shit. And went down to the United States and decided it would be easier to live her life as a male than as a female, because just as a single female, there's not a lot of things for her to do that she could do. So she became a Frank Livingston, what's the name that she took? And Frank Thompson. I'm sorry, my bad. Frank Thompson. And Frank wound up becoming a Bible salesman, going around the country, pretty successful at it.
Were they squeezable?
They were fake Bibles. They're the ones you open up and it's just like a bottle of whiskey is inside of it. So she winds up... I got the squeezable thing. That's funny. Yeah. Good job. So the Civil War comes around and she decides she wants to serve. So she, as Frank Thompson, joins the Union forces as a nurse. There's a big call for nurses at the time. And she winds up Frank winds up becoming a nurse, serving at, according to her, Bull Run, Antietam, Vicksburg, several other major battles during the Civil War. Eventually, according to her, now this part is a little bit dicey in terms of the actual historical record. She claims that she was a spy working for Pinkerton during the Civil War, like one of Pinkerton's spies. And that she went behind undercover to Confederate camps as, dyeing her skin with nitrate so she could pass as a male black slave. Wow. Or several other things. Now, there's not any record of this, so it's just basically based on her memoirs. So that part's... Look, if you can't trust a female dressed as a male, who can you trust? Especially a Bible salesman. So what winds up happening to her is she winds up contracting malaria. And she realizes she can't get treatment for this in the camp, because then they're going to realize she's a female.
Oh.
So she winds up leaving camp to get treatment at a private hospital. When by the time she gets out, she realizes, oh wait, Frank is now wanted for desertion.
Oh.
So then she starts living her life as a female, goes back in and volunteers. At this point, they're also looking for female nurses. So goes back in and volunteers as a female nurse for the rest of the war. And this all kind of came out because years later, she had picked up some injuries during the war, and she applied for a pension as Frank Thompson. She basically said, "I served as Frank Thompson. I did actually serve, so I should be able to get, a pension based on my service." And at first, they were going to not deny her this, based on the fact that A, you're abroad,
Yeah.
and then B, you were a deserter.
Yeah.
But a lot of her former soldiers that she had fought with basically said, "No, we can vouch for her. This is really the true story, and she should be getting her pension." So she was basically, I think, the only female who received like a pension from the government after the Civil War, and was like basically confirmed as an actual soldier in the war.
Who did you, in your brain, either of you, see when you see this?
Julie Andrews.
Really?
I see that with most people whenever.
Most people. Do you think that's fascinating? Seems like a person who is impersonating an imposter for a valiant means, or for somebody who's looking for an opportunity, and actually, even though Civil War for a lot of people is just the kind of best job or most available job in a time of famine, but it seems like a person who found her actual identity limited her options.
Right.
Another identity gave her an opportunity to serve and help and gain income.
Yeah, to open up this world for like lots of other things she could possibly do. And then after the war, she winds up getting married to a guy and has like 3 kids, and just winds up living in, I think near Kansas City. And yeah, she winds up being the only Kansas City again. God damn.
Did this drop out from your drag choices? Famous drag characters person.
By the end of the season, we'll have you can just take one pick from any topic and just reapply them, and they're all
guys. It's the end of the season. We're starting to get a little threadbare here.
Did you see Summersby, the movie? Like,
yes.
It posits that people went off to the Civil War and they came back looking entirely different. Like your wife might not even recognize you or something.
Well, that's Martin Greer, isn't it? Like there's a famous French case, like
is it?
I think it's based off of that, the story, like in the 16th, 15th century.
Well, I can understand if you got your head shot in with a cannon.
If you're missing limbs and your face is sideways.
I know there's a movie based on Martin Greer, and Gerard Depardieu played him coming back. And you could see where somebody could look at Gerard Depardieu's face and say, yeah, something happened to him. There's some sort of injury or something.
Face Off was about that,
Face
right?
Face Off was totally about that. Michael, you're up.
My last choice is Danny Kaye as Hubert Hawkins from the 1956 movie The Court Jester.
Oh, that's charming.
This is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I love The Court Jester. I think I have a really special Christmas memory of me and my sister and my father going to see it. Like it was playing at an old timey theater down in Hollywood or something. But we went to go see this, and just everything, like the wordplay in this movie is
the chalice from the palace.
The chalice from the palace is the pellet with the poison. The flagon of the dragon is the brew that is true. And the get it got it good. The get it got it good is what I still do with my sister and my dad. It's just over and over. But in this movie, he plays like an ex-carnival kind of entertainer.
Yeah.
But he's like working within like the realm. This is it's set in like kind of medieval England.
Yeah. And
he's playing a character who's working with a Robin Hood sort of band of people trying to overthrow the kingdom. Because there's like an impersonator of a king on the throne. He's not the true king. Isn't on the throne. It's actually this baby.
Yeah.
That has purple pimpernel, which is like a birthmark on his butt of like so dumb. But anyway, so he's kind of like this entertainer, and he's like tasked with a mission with this lady Jean to kind of escort this baby to safety and to kind of help put him back on the throne. He ends up doing a number of different like impersonations in it, and being an imposter in different ways. He dresses up as an old man, but his kind of main thing is impersonating Giacomo, who's like the court jester who's coming to the palace, and he just goes through. He's just charming and ridiculous throughout this entire thing.
Listeners, Michael is smiling from ear to ear. Has been
so happy about this.
And throughout the kind of movie, he has to take on different personas within that persona.
Yeah.
He gets bewitched by this witch, and he has to be charming and dashing, and at the same time, he kind of reverts back into like this frightened kind of way in over his head character. But like, he's just so good, and the character is so good, and the many roles that he plays within this movie are just amazing.
Danny Kaye, I think, also had his own role that he played. Was he? I think he was gay and not
really
quite out or something like that. And I think also being gay and I think Jewish was two identities.
Two strikes against you back in the 50s.
Well, yeah, two aspects of his identity that he
at least he wasn't Native American, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, so you're saying that Kaminsky is a Jewish last name?
I don't know. And all by all counts, Hollywood's biggest asshole, from what I hear.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a total douche nozzle.
I like that we got that in unison, Richard, because he doesn't portray it that way. He just comes off as this extremely talented across many boards, actor and performer and dancer and a comedian and all. He hits all the different. It was a time when you had to be all of those things. Yeah, you had to be versatile and
total quadruple
as a
threat.
crooner.
Yeah. I think Jerry Lewis ripped off his first act of kind of a miming a typewriter thing from Danny Kaye. So he definitely was inspiring to a lot of people. So Richard, good luck. You got the last one.
All right. So my last one. We're going to Japan for this one.
Oh, sweet.
Mamoru Samuragochi. He is allegedly, possibly, a Japanese composer who became very famous in the 90s. Has had works selected for celebrations of the memorials of the bombing of Hiroshima, Final Fantasy games, Olympic skaters were using his music. He was also deaf.
Oh.
And he was... Time magazine called him a modern-day digital age Beethoven. Got a lot of recognition. They had NHK TV after the earthquakes and tsunamis. Did a special with him where he went around consoling and talking to victims and survivors of it. Until in 2014, it came out that in fact he was neither likely the composer of any of the works or deaf.
Oh dear.
He had been a rock musician and dabbled in composing and decided to get into that. Got hired on for a soundtrack gig, realized there was probably in over his head in terms of what he could do. So he went to a professor of music at a music college in Tokyo and said, "Hey, will you write this for me? I'll pay you whatever percentage of the credit.
I'll pay you your teacher's salary."
Well, for 20 years, probably for this one Final Fantasy game or whatever it was. And the guy agreed to it, not really knowing that he was going to be presenting himself as completely deaf.
Did he team up with Stevie Wonder?
Now it's
who you supposed isn't blind.
It's funny that you mentioned this. See, now that hearing and reading this story and being reminded of it, because I do remember when this first happened, I feel slightly vindicated about this. I feel like, okay, here's another slight tick on the possibility that this could happen.
This is just confirmation bias, Richard.
And
that's inductive reasoning.
This other thing obviously proves this because it's within the same realm of study.
So when a Japanese figure skater was going to be using his music, the actual composer stepped forward and say, "Look, we can't keep this lie up anymore." Had a press conference, kind of exposed the whole thing. Now, Samuragochi actually claimed that, I didn't write the music, most of it. Maybe I wrote a little bit of it. Sorry about that, although I did write some of it. Oh, no, by the way, I am mostly deaf. I'm totally deaf in one ear, and I'm kind of deaf in the other ear, and I have a hearing aid. That when we talked about like how much balls it takes to pull off an imposter thing. To be not just be pretending to be a composer, but then adding the element of, by the way, I'm deaf onto it. Yeah. That is just next level balls right there. Yeah. One thing he did not claim or should never have claimed to have is a lack of balls. Yeah. Because that is just chutzpah 101.
Wow, that was pretty cool. I would love for you to indulge me when I name my two favorites. One is myself. I had I volunteered for some dumb reason to portray the character Fake Adam West, who's called Fake Adam West, at a screening of the Batman '66 film. And while there, a woman who was wearing a makeshift Wonder Woman costume summoned me over and started yelling at me, and she said that she was a former member of the CIA, and what I was doing, pretending to be Adam West, was illegal, as she knows Adam West's widow, and shame on me for trying to be Adam West, and if the widow saw me, I could cause her great trauma. So at that point, I told her I never told anybody that I was Adam West. I was always saying I was fake Adam West.
Right.
And realized that she was the crazy one. But I also...
Can we get her on the show?
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I also realized that I was standing there in tights. And so I was also being pretty stupid. And then my favorite actual non-me imposter was the convicted child killer who made a career out of impersonating a dead member of Sha Na Na.
What?
Yeah. There was a guy by the name of Edward Elmer Solly who gets arrested. Elmer Edward Solly impersonated Danny C., a former member of Sha Na Na in Florida, and performed on stage with doo-wop groups. So was somewhat hiding in plain sight after years of being on the lam for murdering his 2-year-old daughter and his girlfriend.
Tight group, that Sha Na Na, who doesn't recognize when someone else is performing with a group of 5 of them.
That's right. Sha Na Na threatened a lawsuit, but didn't follow through because they didn't want to give him any more attention than he deserved. He was arrested in 2001, incarcerated, then released on good behavior in 2003. I just think that's so hilarious, dude. And in a way, it kind of says...
Only in Florida.
Only in Florida, totally. That's Florida, man, right there.
Wrong episode.
But I think it's fascinating because it's kind of like if you don't want to talk to people about your career, tell them they're your systems analyst or something like that. Like
And tell them what my job is.
Yeah, if you
people's eyes glaze over instantly.
I'm still not exactly sure what it is. I've known you for a decade.
It's only been 12 years, Rich.
But this guy, I mean, I don't know. If I were the police, I would think, it can't be this. This guy can't be the murderer. Who would do this? Who would say he was this, who was not a former member of Sha Na Na? All right, so let's move on. And thank you guys for such awesome choices. They were they seemed very heartfelt and inspired from each of you. From Richard, I am going to take, just because it gave me so much joy, and I can see the movies probably coming out pretty soon. The Barry Bremen Sports, I think that's really awesome.
There's a good 30 for 30 short, by the way, ESPN.
Is it really?
Yeah, make sure you watch it. It's really good.
And then from Michael, Danny Kaye, the court jester, just due to the sheer joy that you had on your face the whole time. And then Faker from Masters of the Universe. And, you know, just to its sheer ubiquity and the venom that was spitting from my mouth when they claimed that they were better than Paul McCartney, Milli Vanilli. So there's 3 for Michael, one great one for Richard that's coming soon to a theater near you. And this has been the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff.
And I am Richard.
I, too, am Richard. Now.
Oh, shit.
And forever.